Okay, so part 2 of this long video series, it looks like. So my initial suspicions, or let's say my initial skepticism, was raised by the fact that as an investigative journalist, Glenn Greenwald did not feel it necessary to investigate the political and financial connections of his own future employer, namely Pierre Omidyar. He defends this decision by saying, since he's been given total editorial control over this so-called news venture, it begs the question whether this editorial freedom is actually what it is. It also begs the question, why on earth Glenn Greenwald is supporting or is instrumental in hiring the ex-chief editor of a website named Gawker, of all places, which is essentially an entertainment trash network on the internet, as the chief editor of this new venture. So at first I thought, this has got to be a joke, but evidently it's not. And not to focus on Greenwald too much, because he's very much defending this. He says, oh, well, this guy has, exposed so many wrongdoings in local governments. And when essentially all Gawker is a scandal sheet. So, and combined with Omidyar's talk about bringing up a new media venture into being, essentially a mass media outlet, only financed by him, it makes me question this whole motivation behind this new outlet. But let me go further, because I do want to say that this article is written by Mark Ames. Now, Mark Ames is a pretty independent journalist. He basically takes on governments as well as corporate entities, and always has. So he's probably the most skeptical person out there. Now, his own venture got gobbled up by Pando Media, and it should be said from the outset that Pando Media is also financed by one of these right-wing libertarians. It's far more right-wing than probably Omidyar, but that person's name happens to be Peter Thiel, and he is the quintessential right-wing libertarian out there. What he had to say over at the Cato Institute regarding democracy, you really need to look this shit up in order to understand the mindset of these people, because essentially what they find dangerous about modern society is any kind of democracy at all. So that's just for starters. So yes, Pando and that publication where Ames published some articles, and he doesn't exclusively publish there, is also compromised. Okay, as far as the donors are concerned. So that, of course, also gives credence to perhaps the argument that if somebody like Ames can trash this neoliberal corporate agenda within Panda itself, then perhaps Greenwald can do that too. That, however, remains to be seen. And that's why this whole subject needs to be brought out in the open. And nobody is above questioning. Nobody is above that. And there is always don't tell me that there isn't any kind of a motivation or any kind of slant involved whenever it comes to media. I would rather have have an open slant, perfectly obvious for anyone to see, rather than this muddling of money and issues, where it becomes so confusing that nobody even knows who's funding whom. So, as I said, this corporate agenda that is being pushed by all the mass media, and evidently Pierre Omidyar has absolutely no problem in jumping right into this by setting up his own organization and following the same sorts of you know uh, click and follow kind of technique that he feels is necessary in order to persuade the masses of something that's going to be good for them. So I'm going to be basically reading now from an essay. Like I said, if it's too boring for you, if your attention span is too short for this, you shouldn't probably be on my channel anyway. You can do your own thing. I just find it very compelling to put this information out there. So I will now click to the article on my computer. And I'm not even sure if this camera is recording anymore. Yeah, evidently it is. Okay, so we can launch into the article then. It's called The Extraordinary Pierre Omidyar, written by Mark Ames and Yasha Levine. I'm going to leave, I can't read all of it, but yeah, I will post a link to it for sure. So, Glenn Greenwald, by the way, had already responded to this sometime back, but you can look it up for yourself. But let me read some very, very pertinent excerpts. The world knows very little about the political motivations of Pierre Omidyar, the eBay billionaire who is founding and funding a $250 million journalism venture with Glenn Greenwald, Laura Poitras, and Jeremy Scahill. What we do know is this: Pierre Omidyar is a very special kind of technology billionaire. We know this because America's sharpest journalism critics have told us this. In a piece headlined "The Extraordinary Promise of the New Greenwald-Omidyar Venture," the Columbia Journalism Review gushed over the announcement of Omidyar's project. And just in case their point wasn't clear, they added the amazing subhead, "Adversarial muckrakers and civic-minded billionaire equals a whole new world." And yes, the fabled civil-minded billionaire, you'll find him 2 doors down from the Tooth Fairy. But seriously, folks, CJR, Columbia Journalism Review, really wants you to know that Omidyar is a breed apart. Nothing like the Randian Silicon Valley libertarians we've become used to seeing. Billionaires don't tend to like the kind of authority-questioning journalism that upsets the status quo. Billionaires tend to have a finger in every pie. Powerful friends they don't want annoyed, and business interests they don't want looked at. By hiring Greenwald and Company, Omidyar is making a clear statement that he's the billionaire's exception. It's like Izzy Stone running into a civic-minded plastics billionaire determined to take on I.F. Stone's Weekly, largely back in the day. No biggie. Honest mistake. And anyway, plenty of others rushed to agree with the Columbia Journalism Review. So I'm going to, spare you the rest of these little paragraphs, but let's launch into the kind of stuff Omidyar represents. No one really seems to be able to specify is what exactly is the ideology of Omidyar and his network promotes. What does Omidyar's idealism and project mean in practice? And is it really so different from the non-idealism of others, presumably bad billionaires? It's almost as if journalists can't answer those questions because they haven't bothered asking them. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Since its founding in 2004, the Omidyar Network has committed nearly $300 million to a range of nonprofit and for-profit charity outfits. An examination of the ideas behind the Omidyar Network and of the investments it has made suggests that its founder is anything but a different sort of billionaire. Instead, what emerges is almost a caricature of neoliberal ideology, complete with the trail of destruction that ensues when that ideology gets put into practice. The generous support of the Omidyar Network goes towards fighting poverty through microlending, reducing third world illiteracy rates by privatizing education, and protecting human rights by expanding property titles, private property rights, into slums and villages across the developing world. In short, Omidyar's network and its philanthropy reveals Omidyar as a free market zealot with an almost mystical faith in the power of the markets to transform the world, end poverty, and improve the lives one microloan at a time.